Lech Lecha.
Lech Lecha.
Of course, mitzvah parsha. Not that that makes it more important, but it's a good parsha. We read about Abraham and all of his important escapades, if you will. So I'm just going to mute you all.
Just show me how much work.
Okay, so we're just going to read a few of the verses in the beginning of the parsha. Then we're going to read a medrash, and then we're going to read a Gemara, and we're going to try to tie it all together. So the parsha says, "Vayema Hashem el Avram, lech lecha me'artzecha u'mimolatecha mibeis avicha el ha'aretz asher hareka." Hashem says to Avram, "Go forth from your native land and from your father's house to the land that I will show you." And of course, everybody knows that this is one of Avram's tests, to be told to go to an unknown land and just to leave and wander about until he was told where to go. The truth is that according to our sages, Avram already had an inkling that the land of Canaan was a special land. And that's why it says at the end of last week's parsha that Avram took his wife and his nephew and his nephew's wife, and they left to go towards the land of Canaan. They left Ur Kasdim, and they stopped in Haran, and they stayed there. So they already had plans to go to Israel, or what was then Canaan, but they stopped, and they were stationed in Haran for a bit. And then this command came that he should continue to travel further away from his birthplace, from his country, to leave his father's family behind. Of course, he took his nephew with him, but everybody else from his father's family was being left behind, and he was going to the Holy Land. Welcome. Ruth's iPhone. Who is that? I can't hear you. You're muted.
It's Ben.
Now, who's Ruth's
That is
iPhone?
me, Rabbi.
I'm sorry?
That is me.
Ruth's iPhone
That
is you?
is me.
Alexander Sevel's
Yeah.
son, Ruth Sevel's son.
Ah, okay, very good. Okay, nice to see you. You didn't look
Oh,
familiar.
here's my dad. That's Alexander.
Hello, hello.
That's me there. I
Hello.
spoke to you on the phone, Rabbi.
Okay, thank you for joining. This is Rabbi Citron. I'm not Rabbi Smith, though.
Oh,
I give the class on Wednesdays.
oh,
Rabbi
okay.
Smith is, he's in charge of all the classes, and he gives some of them, but I give this particular one.
Okay.
Very good.
Rabbi Sitton, can I ask you?
Yes, please.
You said he tells him to go to the Holy Land. I didn't know that it was a Holy Land by that time.
No, he actually just told him to go to the land that I will show you.
Right.
And of course, it became a holy land. But at that time, it was the land of Canaan.
He turned it into a Holy Land.
Exactly. Ezra is here. Nice to see you, Ezra, or to see your background at least. Okay, so there's a couple verses where Hashem says he's going to bless those that bless him, and those that curse him will be cursed. And all the nations of the world will be blessed through you. And then in verse 4 it says, Vayelech Avram, Avram went. Ka'asher diber elav Hashem, as Hashem had spoken to him. Vayelech itoi Lot, and Lot went together with him. Va'avram and chamesh shana v'shivim shana b'tzeisem Haran, and Avram was 75 years old when he left from Haran. I'm going to mute you all again. and you can unmute yourself as you see fit. Okay, so, which is in general a lesson about using out our older age. Avram really only started his career as one of the patriarchs really from the age of 75. I mean, he already expressed belief in Hashem when he was 3 years old, and then 40, he got stronger in that belief, in 48. But he really only made the trailblazing path of moving to Canaan and everything that followed at the age of 75. Of course, in those days, people lived longer, but nevertheless, it's a good lesson. Okay, so here we have a medrash that describes Avraham's travels through the various countries on the way to the land of Canaan. And this is from Parshas Rabbah 38:9. There are many midrashim. A medrash is an interpretation of the oral text based on an interpretation of the written text based on the oral traditions. And it's called medrash. The word drash means to expound. It's like an expansion and an explanation of the verses. We get a lot of the background story to the story in the Chumash from the medrash. So here's the medrash. Vayilach Avram kasher dibar elav Hashem vayilach italot. Amar Rab Levi says, I'm going to read and translate as I go. B'shah shahaya Avraham mahalech ba'aram na'arayim v'aram nachar. When Avram was traveling through Aram Naharayim and Aram Nachar, because remember, he originated in Ur Kasdim, and he traveled towards Canaan, but he passed through other countries, Choron, Aram Naharayim, Nachar, Aram Nachar, and so on. Ra oisan oichlin v'shoistim upoichazim. He saw them eating, drinking, and reveling. Basically, the inhabitants were leading decadent lifestyles of self-pleasuring, not really doing things that were, that were conducive to a good, proper civilization. They were just living it up. Amar, he said to himself, Halavai lo yeheli chelik be'eretz hazois. I hope, I wish, or maybe this was actually a prayer to God, I wish that I'm not going to have a portion in this land. He didn't want to live in such a land. Once he came to the sulam, sulam literally means a ladder, but it basically means like a slope, the slope of Tzur, which is Tyre in modern day Lebanon. But Tyre was originally supposed to be part of the Holy Land. It was part of the land of Canaan that was given to the patriarchs. Amar, he said, Halavai, Ra Oisan, he saw them, Asukin ben Nichush, Beshasa Nichush, Beidur Beshasa Idur. He saw them engaged in weeding at the time of weeding, in hoeing at the time of hoeing, and of course, everything else in the appropriate time. They were involved in agriculture. There's another medrash, by the way, that speaks about the Chivi, who were one of the nations that lived in the land of Canaan. And it says they were such experts in agriculture that they could taste the ground and they would know what is the proper thing to plant in that ground. Because the ground has different nutrients in it, and if you're an expert, you can actually taste them. So they were a very agricultural bunch. Omar, he said, Halavai yehei chelki be'eretz hazois. I wish that I have a portion in this land. Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem said to him, Lezaracha etein es ha'aretz hazois. I am going to give your children this land. So his prayer was fulfilled. Question? Somebody had a question? Nope. No questions? Okay. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe has a question on this medrash. Why is it important that the people of the land should be into agriculture instead of parties? Why was it so important that Avraham wished that this should be the land? After all, his children who were supposed to conquer the land were supposed to obliterate all of the locals. There were not supposed to be any inhabitants left. Loi sechaya kol neshama. Do not leave alive anybody. I know that seems to go against the rules of warfare. Generally, the Jewish people did not kill women and children because they're non-combatants, as they say in today's language, and it was forbidden to kill them. They would take them as slaves. We read about that in the battle with Midian, but they would not kill them. So the 7 nations of Canaan were an exception, as were the Amalekites, by the way. The Amalekites were a sworn enemy of the Jewish people, and the Jewish people were instructed to wipe them out, completely obliterate them, men, women, and children, and even the animals. Because there was such a wicked nation that if any of them were allowed to survive, they would crop back up again and make further troubles for the Jews, as they did. So that was one exception. Another exception were these 7 nations who inhabited the land of Canaan. And it doesn't say exactly why the Jewish people were instructed to absolutely obliterate them, but we do know that they were a very wicked bunch. Because it says in the Bris Ben Abasarim, in the covenant between the parts, that is also in this week's Parsha, when God promised Avram that he's going to give the land to his descendants, to Avram's descendants, he said it's only going to be the 4th generation that's going to come back here. Ki lo sholem avon ha'amoiri adhena, because the sin of the Amorites has not been completed until now. Meaning to say, the fact that the Jews need a land is not a reason to kill out the local population. Because what did they do wrong that they should have to die for the Jews to have a land? But they had sinned. And therefore God, who owns the entire earth and all its inhabitants, can tell the Jews, yeah, these people deserve to be killed. However, at the time of Avram, their sin was not complete as of yet. So that's why it had to be delayed and they had to go down to Egypt for 4 generations. But when they were in the desert on the way back from Egypt to Israel to conquer it, the verse says, Kemase Eretz Mitzrayim lo yisasu, u'chamase Eretz Canaan asher ani mevi eslam shama lo yiselechu. You should not behave in a manner similar to the Egyptians where you used to live, nor in a manner similar to the Canaanites where you're going to settle. And Rashi says that these 2 nations were the worst. They were completely terrible from a moral perspective. They had no morals. And the example is given in terms of the promiscuity that existed in the land of Egypt, the adultery, the homosexuality, and similar things in the land of Canaan. And that's why God said that the Jews should wipe them out, men, women, and children. Yes, David.
Do you have a screen as you can share? Because I'd like to see what you're saying, but I don't see a screen share.
What I was just quoting now, I was quoting from memory, but I did send out a handout. Did you get the handout by email?
I didn't look.
Can you look now?
Okay.
Because I'm doing the Zoom off my phone. My computer's
Oh,
camera isn't working, so I'm not really sure how to share the screen on the phone, and I don't have a document on my phone. So
okay. So just keep on going. I'll get it. Usually I get the email, but I get like 50 emails a day, so I didn't check.
sorry, I sent it late. I sent it about 2:30. Sorry. Okay. So back to the question. Why was Avram so excited, or I should say so happy, to get the land of Canaan? Because the people, the inhabitants, were into agriculture. What difference does that make? Those inhabitants were supposed to be wiped out. Now, on the other hand, you might say, well, Abraham was happy because he was supposed to live there till the end of his life. Yitzchok was going to live there for his entire life. Yaakov lived there for many decades. So even though the Jewish people were not going to have to share the land with the locals, but him and his son and his grandson and his great-grandchildren too a bit were going to have to live there with the locals, and I didn't want that to be a bad influence. So that we could understand. Just 1 second, Ben.
Okay.
But the fact is that the Torah says, Hashem said to him, "L'zaracha etein es ha'oretz hazois." I'm going to give this land to your children. Meaning to say, because it's an agricultural society that you're happy with, I'm going to give it to your children. So there's obviously something about them being into agriculture and the Jewish people getting the land. Yes, go ahead, Ben.
I wanted to say, if it's agricultural land, then it's also good for Abraham and his people that have sheep and goats and animals that need grass. And if it's good for agriculture, it's good for pasture. So
I mean, I do hear you. It is important to have grass if you're a shepherd. But in the context of it, it seems like it's more about the behavior of the people. Because the Medrash is contrasting the lifestyle in Aram Naharaim and Aram Nahor, where the people ate, drank, and reveled. They translate Poichazim, by the way, as revel.
what's level?
Revel, R-E-V-E-L.
Oh, revel. Okay.
Revel, which means just to party. But actually, I think that's like a nicer translation. I think the word Poichazim actually means to throw up, which is similar to the Roman style of people who like partying and eating so much that they would force themselves to throw up so they could then eat more. So that's like the ultimate in self-pleasuring, where you're just eating for the purpose of pure pleasure, not even nourishment.
If Abraham was going through the land,
Yep.
why did it matter for him, and he was a shepherd, that they were on the land? He was going through the land.
Yeah, but he didn't know which one was going to be his ultimate resting place. So when he came to this land, he said, "Uh-oh, I hope it's not this one." Came to the next one, I hope it's not this one. And thank God it wasn't. When he came to Canaan, he said, "I hope it is this one." And God said, "Yes, this is the one." It's like musical chairs, like you don't know where you're going to end up. Yes, David.
I was able to get the PDF. Can I
Oh,
share the screen? Will that work?
please, by all means.
Oh.
Okay. Another question is, if you want to talk about the morals of the people, and that Avram perhaps felt that the land itself had an influence on the inhabitants, which we do have such a concept, by the way. We do have such a concept where the actual land, the physical land, is said to impact the people that live there. Take, for example, the place called Shittim, which was in Transjordan, the place where the Jewish people camped before they crossed the Jordan River. And that is the place where they sinned with the daughters of Moab. And the Medrash associates that sin with that particular area. And it points out that the Jews had passed through so many lands on the way to this land, yet they managed to keep their purity about them. And during their time in Egypt, there was only one case of intermarriage, and that even was not a willing case. That's where the Egyptian taskmaster tricked Shlomit Bas Divri, and she thought it was her husband, and they had a baby together, a whole story. That was the singular case. And sorry about that. Through other lands, and we don't find them sinning in this particular way. Specifically in the plains of Moab, in the place called Shittim, they behaved inappropriately. And the Medrash associates that with the physical place. Shittim means foolishness. It was a place that lent itself to foolish behavior. There was like an aura and an atmosphere of promiscuity in that land. So we see that a land can have an impact on those that live there. And therefore you might say, well, Avram was happy that the inhabitants were agricultural people and they weren't just into partying, because even if the Jews were going to completely displace those inhabitants and settle in their place, but the land itself has a positive disposition and a positive influence on the people. And perhaps that's what Avram meant. The problem with that is the verse that I quoted earlier from Vayikra, from Leviticus, where we see that the Egyptians and the Canaanites were the most immoral group at that time. And the verse singles them out and instructs the Jewish people not to follow in their negative behavior. So, on the one hand, they had a good agricultural system, and they didn't just party all the time, so that's good. On the other hand, when they finished plowing and planting and harvesting, they went out and they sinned in ways that was completely immoral. So what's the difference that they were good farmers? Why was that so important to Abraham? This is the Lubavitcher Rebbe's question. Took us a while to get there, but that's the question. Any ideas? You're not expected to know the answer, but if you have any questions on the material till now or any ideas, feel free to share.
Rabbi, somebody's sharing the screen. Is that you?
Not me.
Oh, well, whoever's sharing the screen, can you make it larger?
I think it was Ezra.
Yeah, I think it's Ezra. Ezra, can you make it larger? There you go, more. One more shot. There you go. Perfect.
Okay. Okay, so in order to answer this question, the Rebbe quotes a Talmud in Sanhedrin. We're going to study that piece of Talmud, and we're going to try to understand it. And based on this, we're going to come back to the Medrash and try to understand the Medrash. The good thing about this class, by the way, is even if we don't understand the answer, which hopefully we'll understand, at least we learned a Medrash, we're learning a piece of Talmud, so we're getting some good classic information from the sources. Amar Rabbi Lazar says, Kol Adam la'omal nivra. Every man was created for labor. Shenemar, as the verse says, Ki Adam la'omal yivaled. Man is born for toil. We're not here to take it easy. We're here to work. If somebody says, what's the best year of your life? And you think back and you say, oh, when I was a baby, it was great. I got everything I needed. Everybody cooed and awed at me. I got fed. I got put to bed. It was great. Okay, sometimes I dirtied myself. I needed to be clean. But yeah, more or less, it was great. That's not why we're here. We're not here to be taken care of. We're not here to be on vacation, to enjoy life. We are created for labor. We're here to toil, says the verse. So, of course, the most productive of one's years, most important of one's years, are the ones where you contribute, where you work, where you make a difference, where you help people. Work doesn't have to mean, of course, working a job, 9 to 5, but it means contributing to society, contributing to those around you, contributing to your family, to your community, to the world by fulfilling mitzvahs, and so on and so forth. So these are productive years. The Talmud continues, based on this verse, I do not know whether he was created for toil of the mouth, speech, or whether he was created for the toil of labor. So, in other words, we definitely have to work. We're here to work, no question about it. But what's the important work that we're created for? Is it for physical labor, to build highways, roads, hospitals, schools, houses, physically build up the world? Or maybe it's for speech, for ideas, for sharing ideas, intellectual discussions and so on and so forth. When the verse states, for his mouth presses upon him, you must say that he was created for the toil of the mouth. So there's another verse that talks about the importance of speech, of using our speech in the right way. And based on that verse, the Talmud says it's not the physical labor that's most important. Of course, we need physical labor as well. So many things can get done without physical labor, no question about it. But the toil of the mouth, which is the speech and the sharing ideas and so on and so forth, that is of greater importance. Still, I do not know, says the Talmud, with regard to the toil of the mouth, whether it's for the toil of Torah or for the toil of conversation. So there's just conversation, ideas, sharing ideas, maybe important ideas, but they're not Torah concepts. Science, history, philosophy, who knows what. So maybe that's important because you're still contributing to the world in those respects. When the verse states, this Torah scroll shall not depart from your mouth, a verse in Joshua, Lo yamush sefer HaTorah azois mipicha. We read that in the Haftorah of Simchas Torah. God says to Yehoshua, the words of this Torah should not depart from your mouth. You must say that it was created for the toil of Torah. So that's the final analysis of the Talmud. We were created for labor, no question about it, but not labor of one's hands, and not even the regular labor of one's speech, but the labor of Torah is most prominent and most important. That is the teaching of the Talmud. Now the Rebbe has a few questions here. I mean, how can you even compare the physical labor with the labor of speech and the labor of Torah with regular speech? I mean, it's a totally much higher level, much more spiritual, much more elevated. Yet the Talmud never even rejects the earlier concepts. It never rejects labor, the physical labor. It never rejects the regular speech. It just says speech is more important than physical labor. Torah is more important than regular speech. But if you notice, it never rejects the other ones. It never says the other ones are not important. So what does it mean? Like, why is it important? Why is the physical labor important? And why is the speech important? If Torah is so important after all, well, then that should be it. Here it seems like this is important, that's important, but the Torah is most important. So these are the questions. We'll pause if anybody has any discussion, any thoughts to share. You don't have to have any answers. This is just a teaching of the Talmud that begs explanation. But if you have any thoughts about it or related to it, now is a great time to share it, or them. Chaim. Yes, please. Kier. You have to unmute yourself.
I have a
There we go.
practical example of the land affects the people who live on it. Is that a man was studied business and environments, and he went around to different cities and spoke to them about their environment, how much it affected them. And I was living in Atlanta at the time, and he said that Atlanta is the trees right up to the doors, you know. So it's called the city amongst the trees. And he said that you feel closed in here, and therefore your decisions, your business decisions, you know, taking risks, etc., are closed in. As I've just come back from Texas, and he said they're just open land. He said this is where people are more dynamic and more taking risks. So I think that's a practical example of, even though we don't know it, we are definitely affected with the environment we're in.
That is very interesting. I never noticed that about Atlanta. I was there a couple times, but I never really noticed that. That's interesting.
Rabbi, why would the Canaanites study Torah?
No, the Canaanites did not study Torah.
You said labor equals Torah.
No, the Talmud has three levels. it starts with labor, and then it talks about speech, and then it talks about Torah. 3 levels. The Canaanites are only mentioned in the earlier Medrash as having importance with labor. We don't see them having any particular speech uniqueness or certainly any Torah uniqueness. But they were good at laboring, yes.
But you said that Abraham conquered them because they didn't have appropriate labor.
No, Abraham was happy that this was the land that his children were going to conquer because it was a land that encouraged labor.
Was
Can
a
I?
land
Sorry.
that didn't allow for frivolity. That's what it basically means.
Exactly. It wasn't a party land. It wasn't like a South Beach type of land. It was more, it was more collected and the civilized people were involved in productive activities. They weren't good, they weren't moral people, but at least they were productive people. Yes.
I believe that the difference between all three levels that we just discussed, that it's just a separation of a spiritual condition that humans are capable of and the animal part of our nature that we have. First of all, physical work, it's possible even to use more or less intelligent animals to do it. This is number one. Number two, I believe that even discussion of ideas that are maybe very important for production or finances or something else, it still has much lower value than the studies or mitzvahs or rules of Torah that actually is addressing a moral part, something that humans are created to bring in this world, something that really I believe is the main kind of idea for creating a human. This is, in my opinion. And the third one, I believe that studying Torah is completely in a different level of your intellectual kind of abilities and action that any other levels that are described. And I believe that the third one, it's almost like you're skimming the best out of every level. And the third one is really something that is the base of second and first level even to exist. If the society is really killing themselves by indulgence and adultery and all other actions, does it really matter if they're really good farmers? I don't think so, because the result is still a very, very bad kind of situation for the next generation, for their own morals, for their own lifestyle. That's why I truly believe that it's really a separation that third level really gives the human abilities to fill in the creative kind of plan that they had.
I hear. We're gonna expand more upon what you're saying soon, but I do hear what you're saying. Yes, very good. Is your husband okay? I don't see him there.
Who is okay?
Who is okay?
Okay, hello. Okay,
I don't know.
very good. So before we try to answer this question, the Rebbe first quotes his father-in-law, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchok Schneers, and his interpretation of this Talmudic teaching before the Rebbe adds his own interpretation. First of all, when we speak about the toil of labor and the fact that that's even a consideration as being something important, for us to be born for that reason. The previous Rebbe says we're not talking about laboring just physical labor. We're talking about a person who does the physical labor and at the same time trusts in Hashem and relies on Hashem and sees how Hashem is the one that gives him success within his physical labors. And this is something very important that only really a person who's involved in labor can see. When you're studying Torah, you can stay in the study hall all day and you can experience the godliness in the Torah, but you don't necessarily see godliness in the world. A person who goes to work and he sees how God is really arranging things and making things happen. And even though he has to actually go to work and he actually has to, open the office and turn the light on and pay the bills and make the orders and whatever else he does in his particular work, but he really sees how Hashem is the one running the show and making things happen in a real practical way. So that's really a special thing. That's not just regular toil. That's a toil which is illuminated by an awareness of God. That's as far as that's concerned. As far as the toil of the mouth, you can guess for yourselves what the previous Rebbe says that means.
Rabbi,
Just one at a time, yes.
I just want to say, toil of the mouth and physical toil, it's manual labor and thought, logical thinking. For example, physics, and the difference between somebody who works the farm, an Amharitz, or they call it Amharitz, or somebody who sits in a room and works on formulas. For example, these are all things that are created by Hashem, but it's not like there's a deity for each thing that's done. You know what I'm saying? It's all one. It's all echad. You know what I'm saying? As we say Shema. It's all one. It all works together.
100%.
Just like, for example, how a piece of wood is cut. Everything is done precisely, and when we look at the buildings around us and see that there is something behind this, an animal can't do it, but we can do it. But on the other hand, like I say, it all coalesces into not just one thing, but into everything, into the whole picture. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
That makes it such an amazing thing and even how our body operates, this digestion and everything, the Krebs cycle and all these different processes that go on in our body. That if one thing goes wrong, then we're all goners. You know what I'm saying? It's just
100%. A person with open eyes can see Hashem everywhere, in everything, in the small things and the big things, and the sun and the moon and the stars, but also in the blades of grass and in the ants and in the atoms and molecules and subatomic particles. There's no question that a person who looks for Hashem can find him everywhere.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Rabbi? I just wanted to make a comment with regard to the labor, and I'm glad you mentioned that it was a land that Abraham was happy because he saw that it gives rise to labor. I was thinking that the thing with regard to the labor of the people who were the ones there already, it requires a certain discipline to be a farmer. It's not just a matter of these people who party and think that you can just run wild and so on. That would be incompatible with the regular discipline of the procedures of farming and like that. But I'm glad that you mentioned that about because it clarifies the situation that the land of Israel itself tends to encourage physical labor. So that even before, we get to the logical part and the part of using our speech, which in the diaspora, we have to use it more, I think most of the time amongst Jewish community, even just to explain our ideas and want to get things across, even scientifically, let alone diplomatically. But that even coming before the spiritual level, but the spiritual level, of course, would be able to be the highest attained in Eretz Israel, I would believe.
Yes, indeed. And the physical and the spiritual merge there. To get back specifically to what I was saying, the previous Rebbe says that the toil of the mouth is referring to none other than prayer. That's the toil of the mouth that we're talking about. We're not talking about lectures. We're not even talking about scientific discoveries and speeches and sharing wonderful intellectual ideas. We're talking about prayer. And then above and beyond even prayer is the toil of Torah, which is an even deeper way of connecting to Hashem even than prayer. So, to understand this on an even deeper level, here we go. The Rebbe explains, why is it that man was created for labor? Why couldn't it be that man would just be created to enjoy life, to just have a wonderful, blissful, peaceful existence and not have to work? Well, you'll say, well, nobody feels good about just enjoying life without working on it. Everybody feels better if they worked to achieve a goal, and then they achieved it, and then they can enjoy the fruits of their labor, then they feel good. Like it says, a person would rather have one portion of something he worked on than 9 portions of something he received as a gift. So maybe that's why we have to labor, so that we should appreciate it. But the thing we have to remember is that God created us, and at the same time He created us, He gave us our tendencies and our natural feelings. So the very idea that you feel better when you work on something to achieve it, rather than just receive it as a free gift, that nature is given to us by God. It's not that it's natural. There's nothing natural. Everything natural is God-given. So why did God create us in this manner, that in order to really feel good about something, you have to work on it? And the concept is that the greatest achievement possible in this world is to become similar to Hashem. If a person can become similar to Hashem, he has accomplished the greatest thing possible for any created being, to become like the Creator. There is a Latin word for it, but I don't remember what it is. To become like the Creator. That's the highest achievable level for a human being. And just like Hashem created this world, and that was something new, and that was something different, that was a change. God is a mashpia. God is a being that gives. that gives of his beneficence to everything else. He is the source of all goodness. He doesn't receive anything from anybody because he doesn't need anything, because he's perfect. So the only receiving happens from us on our end that we receive from him. So the greatest satisfaction that a person can have is to be godlike. And to be godlike is to make changes, to accomplish, to do something. So the first level is toil. God created this world, and we can contribute to this world by making it a better world, even in the simple sense, creating bridges, creating dams, roads and hospitals and housing and all those other wonderful things. We are toiling to make the world a better, more inhabitable place. In that sense, we are following God's footsteps, especially if we recognize the godliness in the world. Like we said earlier from the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, that the highest level of the toil of labor is not just to labor, but to see the godliness in the labor you do. So you're introducing an awareness of Hashem into this world, which is also something new that the world does not innately have. So that's level number one. Level number two is the toil of speech, which is the toil of prayer. When a person prays, he doesn't just reveal the godliness within this world, but he reveals a deeper level of godliness, a level of godliness that is only achievable by a human being. A human being has the power to pray, to connect to Hashem, and through the prayer, a person can make changes in this world. Hashem answers a person's prayers and changes things in this world. So that's an even deeper accomplishment, not just to bring godliness into the physical labor, but to bring a deeper, higher level of awareness of God into this world through prayer. But the highest level is Torah study, because Torah study is even beyond a level that we can achieve on our own. We can pray because we have Jewish souls and we have the ability to pray. But the Torah is a gift from Hashem, and it's an aspect of Hashem himself. It's God's intellect. And to study Torah in this world is to introduce a level of God that is completely beyond the world, even completely beyond ourselves. And that's why it's the ultimate accomplishment in this world, because it is the ultimate chiddush. Chiddush means something new, when you accomplish something new that was not previously accomplished. So you're not only revealing the godliness in the physical and not just connecting God, the level of God that we can achieve on our own to this world, but connecting the deepest level of God that is achievable into this world. Now that's why the Gemara, the Talmud says all three levels: toil of Torah, toil of speech, toil of labor, toil of speech, toil of Torah, because each one builds on the next one. You must bring an awareness of godliness into the physical labor, then bring an awareness of God through prayer, and then the highest level of awareness through Torah study. So it has to be gradual to be able to accomplish it properly.
Rabbi, we started off Lech Lecha Me'artzecha.
Yes.
Does this have to do with Lech Lecha Me'artzecha?
Here we go. We have 3 minutes to tie it back in. So when Abraham was traveling and he was leaving his land and he was trying to find the land God showed him, he was happy to see the Canaanites involved in their agriculture. And God said, this is going to be the land of your children. And the reason for that is because to bring a higher level of godliness into this world, you need to first have a civilized world. That's why it was important. If it was going to be a land where people were just partying, so it was not a land that had the proper civilization, a proper structure of civilization, so then it's very hard to transform it and elevate it to make it a godly place. He was happy that it was a civilized, normal country where
Where
people
say that the Torah?
It says it in the Medrash. In the Medrash, it talks about Avram's journeys on the way to the land of Canaan, and that's where it says that he was happy to see that they were laborers.
It has nothing to do with the Parsha.
The Parsha talks about Avram traveling to Canaan, and the Medrash describes that travel.
Wow.
Connection. So this is why Avram was happy that they were laboring people, because if you have a civilized world, you can then elevate it and bring godliness into it. It's a gradual ascension, and that level could not be skipped. All right, David, can you wrap it up for us?
Can I wrap it up for you?
David Olensky usually gives us a little tidbit at the end.
So one tidbit that I think sort of goes through everything that you said is it's not from what you said though. I heard Rabbi Manis Friedman speaking yesterday online, and he said that before Hashem made the world, Hashem was perfect. He was perfect. So if he was perfect, why did he have to make the world? There was obviously something that he missed. He missed for people to be doing Torah and mitzvahs. So even though he was perfect, he was not good. He didn't see that it was good before he made the world. It was only after he started to make the world that he saw that it was good.
I hear you.
So in order for there to be good, it wasn't just enough that there should be perfect. There had to be people doing good and choosing between good and the opposite of good. And that all ties in what you said, that it's bringing everything down to a reality of people doing stuff. It's not just enough to speak. You have to speak words of Torah. It's not just enough to do things. They have to be good things in Torah and mitzvahs. And all this has to be in a culmination of all this coming together in a productive way and in a good way. And that's where Hashem is able to have his effect felt in the world.
Okay, very good. Yasha Koyach, everybody, thank you all for joining. I wish you a good Shabbos, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good
Good
Shabbos.
Shabbos.
Thank you.
Good day, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Joining, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Sure. All the best.
Hi, Rabbi.
What?
Sorry, it's over.